Hi there. If you're here right now, thank you. Truly. There's something quietly beautiful about two strangers meeting in the stillness of a story. Maybe you're opening this story on a quiet afternoon. Maybe the rain is gently tapping against your window, or you're simply sitting alone in a small room where the world finally feels quieter. Wherever you are, I'm grateful you made it here. This story isn't grand. It won't shout or dazzle, but it will sit with you. In silence, in softness, in that space between memory and dream, where pain doesn't need to be explained, only witnessed. Here, every feeling is allowed. Here, every scar is gently seen. And if there's one thing I hope you carry when the last line fades, it's this: you are not alone. So let's begin. Slowly. As if we're telling each other stories in the warmth of late sunlight, when the heart is finally quiet enough to listen, and soft enough to understand. You don't remember falling asleep, if sleep was even the right word. Maybe it was more like drifting, slipping, or just losing consciousness under the weight of exhaustion. But now, you're awake. And the first thing you notice is the cold. Not just any cold. Not the kind you shake off with a blanket or a breath. No, this cold seeps into your skin, into your bones, like it's been waiting there, for you. You're lying in something wet, thick, grainy. Your hands sink into it slightly as you try to push yourself up. Mud. But not the kind from childhood puddles or rainy afternoons. This mud is different. This one moves. It bubbles. It breathes. And it smells. A stench rises with every movement of your body. Sweet, sour, metallic, rotten. You gag before you fully understand why. Then it hits you. Corpses. You're lying near one. Or maybe on one. You don't dare look just yet. Not until you're fully awake, if that even matters here. There is no bed, no shelter, no morning sun, only darkness, not full black, but the murky gray that hangs over trenches like a permanent dusk. Somewhere above you, water drips steadily, a rhythmic tapping, like a clock that forgot how to tell time, like the world decided minutes don't matter anymore. You sit up slowly, trying not to slip. Your uniform is soaked, not from rain, not even from sweat, but from the trench itself. This place clings to you, coats you, enters your mouth, your ears. And the moment you breathe too deep, you choke. There it is again. That smell, rotting meat, shit, oil, gunpowder, and something else. Something thinner, more delicate, like blood that's been out too long. You swallow it, because there's no choice. You pull yourself to your knees. Your legs ache. Your lower back stings. Every inch of you feels waterlogged, not just with mud, but with time. Something stirs near your elbow. A rat. Fat, brown, eyes shiny like marbles. It stares at you, unmoved, before scurrying off under a shattered plank. You wonder what it was eating. But you don't ask, because you already know. And some questions are better left. Buried. A cough erupts not far down the trench, then another, then someone vomiting. You can't see them, not fully, but the sounds travel like echoes in a crypt, the kind of echoes that don't end, just curl back around. And then, the moaning. One long drawn-out wail, human, but barely. You instinctively check your pocket, the small one sewn inside your jacket. It's still there. A photo, maybe. A letter. Something fragile and dry and forgotten by this wet world. You don't take it out. Not now. But just knowing it's there is enough. You reach for your helmet. It's beside you, half submerged. You shake out the filth, press it back onto your head, and try to breathe. That's when the smell hits again. Sharper this time. It's not just the rot, it's the metallic tinge of blood. Close. Fresh. You turn slowly. A man, no, a boy, no older than 19, is slumped against the trench wall. His eyes are open, but they don't blink. Don't move. Just stare. You step closer, knee-deep in muck, and crouch beside him. He's still warm, but not breathing. A hole, small and neat, decorates his temple. Exit wound at the back. Much messier. Someone already took his tags. You sit beside him for a minute. Not because you knew him, but because he's the first person you've seen today who isn't screaming. You stay like that longer than you should. Eventually, a whistle sounds, high-pitched. 3 short bursts, stand to, sunrise, which means it's morning, allegedly. You haul yourself upright and begin the slow shuffle to your station. A narrow firing step, half sunken in muck, shielded by sandbags that leak. As you walk, men move around you like ghosts. Some are still half asleep. Some are silent. One is crying, quietly, into a piece of cloth. You don't speak. No one does. The only real sounds are boots and slush, tin cups clinking, and the low murmur of 1,000 tired lungs pretending they're still part of something human. You take your place on the firing step. The rifle's already there, propped up just as you left it. You check the chamber, still muddy. You spit on a cloth and wipe it. Behind you, someone mutters, "Hot breakfast if the rats didn't get it." You don't respond, because breakfast will be the same as yesterday. Gray porridge, stale biscuit, a sip of cold tea if you're lucky. A man next to you lights a cigarette. He doesn't offer one. You don't ask. Instead, you rest your elbows on the edge of the trench, peer over the parapet, and look at nothing. Because that's what's out there. Nothing but wire, dead trees, cratered soil, and mist. Always the mist. You close your eyes, just for a second. And that's when it happens. A sound, sharp, shrill, alien. Whistles, shouts. Gas! 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 Your heart leaps. You don't think. You move. Your hand dives for the satchel on your hip. Fumbles, shakes. You pull out the mask, rubber, damp, already smelling of mold, and wrench it over your face. Too slow. The first wave hits like a breeze, soft and deceptive. But your eyes burn instantly. Your throat closes. You fall to your knees, gasping. Someone next to you didn't get their mask on in time. He's screaming, clawing at his throat, his skin already turning red. You hear him fall. Then another. You stay crouched, breathing through the mask, praying it's sealed, praying it's real. Somewhere, a man's voice is yelling orders, but they're muffled, warped, unreal, like shouting underwater. You don't move. Not yet. You wait. And finally, the green fog lifts, just enough. You take one careful breath, then another, and then the all clear. 3 long whistles. You tear the mask off and suck in air like it's wine. Your lungs burn, but you're still alive. You look around. Not everyone is. You want to scream, but you don't. Because you're used to this now. Used to the fact that every sunrise might be someone's last. Used to the gas, the dead, the silence. Especially the silence. Because here, in this hell, it's never truly quiet. Even when no one speaks. Even when the shells stop. Even when the rats pause. There's always the sound of fear. Of hearts beating in sync, too fast. Of breath held too long. Of grief with nowhere to go. And you? You're still here. You reach into your pocket again, touch the edge of the photo, still dry, still real. You don't cry. You don't smile. You just whisper, "I'm still here." And somehow, that's enough. The sun doesn't rise, not really. It just seeps in like a bruise, turning the mist from silver to yellowish gray. You stand there, unmoving, watching it creep across the jagged tops of the trench walls. There's no warmth in it, no comfort, just light enough to remind you that you're still in the same place, and that the day has started again. A voice behind you, Thomas. Didn't think you'd make it through the night, he says, like he's asking how the weather's been. You glance at him. He looks the same as always. Gaunt, dirty, eyes too old for his face, but calm, almost bored. I didn't either, you reply. He nods, lights a cigarette, and leans back against the wall. The match flares briefly, illuminating the dried blood on his collar. Neither of you mentions it. Someone further down shouts for a runner. Someone else is crying. A third man is digging with his hands, searching for something in the mud, screaming a name. You turn away, because you've learned by now that you can't help everyone. Some men are already too far gone, not dead, but not really living either. Breakfast comes, if you can call it that. A tin mess cup of something vaguely edible. You force it down, more out of habit than hunger. Then you wait, because that's what this war is, more than anything. Waiting. Waiting for shells, waiting for orders, waiting to sleep, to move, to die. Thomas offers you a half cigarette. You take it, not for the smoke you barely inhale, but for the ritual, the act of sharing something in a world that takes everything else. You knew? A voice asks from your left. You turn. A boy. Thin, pale, barely shaving, his boots too clean. You nod. He stares at you, eyes wide. First night's always the worst, he says. You want to tell him that it doesn't get better, that it just gets familiar. But instead, you say, yeah, because lies are the only kindness left. He sticks out a hand. Private Dean. You hesitate, then shake it. No one uses real names for long. It hurts more when they disappear. The day passes like they always do. Time measured in chores, fear, and the distant boom of artillery. You repair sandbags. You refill water cans. You change your socks, or try to. Trenchfoot is a silent killer. It doesn't scream or explode. It just rots, like everything else here. That night, you're on watch. The sky above is clear for once, stars bleeding through the smoke. For a moment, just a moment, it's beautiful. Thomas sits next to you. Want to hear something funny? He says. You nod. When I signed up, I thought I'd be home by Christmas. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because you remember thinking the same. A rat scurries between your feet. You don't flinch. I miss butter, he says suddenly. You turn. Just butter. On toast. Simple things. You nod again. You miss your sister's voice. The way she used to hum when she washed dishes. You miss chairs with backs. You miss clean fingernails. But mostly, you miss not being afraid of silence. At some point, someone plays a harmonica. The sound drifts through the trench, strange and gentle. It almost doesn't belong here. And that's what makes it holy. You close your eyes. You're not trying to sleep. You're just trying to remember what it felt like to be someone else. To be someone who thought this would be an adventure. You breathe slowly. The mud presses up around you, heavy and damp. Your uniform never dries. And then, the distant whine of an incoming shell. Too close. You duck instinctively. Dirt rains down. The explosion tears through the far wall of the trench, showering you with stones and wood and screams. You open your eyes. Smoke. Dust. Thomas yelling someone's name. You crawl toward the sound. There's a body. Maybe two. One is missing a leg. The other is holding their own intestines in with their bare hands. You do what you can, which isn't much. A stretcher comes. Then it's quiet again. You return to your spot. Your cigarette's still there, half burnt. You pick it up, relight it, and watch the smoke drift into the sky. And now, here you are, still breathing, still in this pit carved into the bones of the earth. The mud still clings. The smell still bites. But you're here. And that, somehow, matters. Because this is not a story of heroes. Not yet. This is a story of survivors. of men who wake up in the mud, smell the dead, and keep going anyway. You press your hand to your chest, feel the faint thump. You whisper again, "I'm still here." And in a place where everything is trying to disappear, those words are everything. The next morning arrives the same way all mornings do out here. Not with sunlight, not with warmth, but with the faint sound of a whistle and the low groan of tired bodies shifting under damp wool. Stand to. You rise before you're even fully awake. Your body moves because it has to, not because you want it to, not because it matters. Your boots are soaked, they never dried. You try not to think about your toes, whether they're just numb or starting to rot. You hope it's just the cold. Thomas is already up. He hands you a tin cup. Tea, if you can call it that. It tastes like copper and mold, but it's hot, and that's something. Next comes the porridge, thin, lukewarm, gray. You eat it slowly, because eating fast only reminds you how little there is. Some men talk while they eat. You don't. There's nothing new to say. After breakfast comes the firing step, routine. 1 hour staring into the mist, 1 hour pretending you'll see something, movement, a flash, a shape, but you never do. Sometimes, just to feel real, you fire a shot. Just one. Into the nothing. No one tells you not to. Sometimes they join in. It's like shouting into the void, except the void might shoot back, but mostly it doesn't. Mostly, the void just stares back. When your shift ends, you don't rest. You patch a hole in the trench wall. You help rebuild a section that collapsed in the rain. You pull a half-buried boot from the mud. There's still a foot in it. You don't talk about it. You just set it aside. Someone will bury it later. Maybe. The hours pass like this, in pieces, in cycles. Shovel, sit, walk, wait, repeat. The sun is hidden, but you know it's out there, moving slowly, marking time you no longer believe in. You used to think days had beginnings and ends. Now they just bleed into each other. An endless loop of wet socks and bad tea and distant shell fire. At some point, you write a letter, not because you have anything to say, but because it's what you're supposed to do. You start with, "Dear Mum." You stare at those two words for a long time. Then you write, "Things are fine," which is the only way to say, "I saw a man scream while rats ate his fingers, and I did nothing." You draw a little picture in the corner. A flower, maybe. It looks stupid. You fold the letter anyway. Later, someone tells a joke. You don't hear it, but you hear the laughter. Short, dry, like sandpaper. It reminds you that laughter still exists, even here. Someone sings for a moment, a hymn, half remembered. Another man curses them for singing. Then it's quiet again. You try to sleep, but the ground is uneven and the lice bite through your collar. You scratch until you bleed. Then you scratch some more. You hear a groan far down the trench. You don't go check. Someone else will. Or they won't. Thomas sits beside you in the dark. His breath fogs in the cold. He lights a cigarette with shaking hands. "You ever think," he says, "about just walking out? Over the top. No weapon, no orders, just go?" You don't answer right away, because you have. Of course you have. But you say no. Because saying yes makes it real, and real things hurt more. He takes a drag, nods slowly. "Did once," he says. "Got 3 steps up the ladder. Then I stopped." "Why?" He shrugs. "Didn't want to die stupid." You almost laugh, but it's not funny. You hear a whistle, one long burst. Mail call. Someone hands you a folded envelope. It's from your sister. Inside is a drawing from your niece. Crayons, a sun, a tree, a crooked house with smoke from the chimney. You hold it like it's glass. You want to cry. But there's no space for that here. So instead, you fold it again and tuck it into the same pocket as the photo. You don't realize you've been holding your breath until you let it go. You haul yourself upright and begin the slow shuffle to your station. A narrow firing step half sunken in muck, shielded by sandbags that leak. As you walk, men move around you like ghosts. Some are still half asleep. Some are silent. One is crying, quietly, into a piece of cloth. You don't speak. No one does. The only real sounds are boots and slush, tin cups clinking, and the low murmur of 1,000 tired lungs pretending they're still part of something human. You take your place on the firing step. The rifle's already there, propped up just as you left it. You check the chamber, still muddy. You spit on a cloth and wipe it. Behind you, someone mutters, "Hot breakfast if the rats didn't get it." You don't respond, because breakfast will be the same as yesterday: gray porridge, stale biscuit, a sip of cold tea if you're lucky. A man next to you lights a cigarette. He doesn't offer one. You don't ask. Instead, you rest your elbows on the edge of the trench, peer over the parapet, and look at nothing. Because that's what's out there. Nothing but wire, dead trees, cratered soil, and mist. Always the mist. You close your eyes, just for a second, and that's when it happens. A sound, sharp, shrill, alien. Whistles, shouts, gas, gas, gas. Your heart leaps. You don't think. You move. Your hand dives for the satchel on your hip, fumbles, shakes. You pull out the mask, rubber, damp, already smelling of mold, and wrench it over your face. Too slow. The first wave hits like a breeze, soft and deceptive, but your eyes burn instantly. Your throat closes. You fall to your knees, gasping. Someone next to you didn't get their mask on in time. He's screaming, clawing at his throat, his skin already turning red. You hear him fall, then another. You stay crouched, breathing through the mask, praying it's sealed, praying it's real. Somewhere, a man's voice is yelling orders, but they're muffled, warped, unreal, like shouting underwater. You don't move, not yet. You wait. And finally, the green fog lifts. Just enough. You take one careful breath, then another, and then the all clear. 3 long whistles. You tear the mask off and suck in air like it's wine. Your lungs burn, but you're still alive. You look around. Not everyone is. You want to scream, but you don't. Because you're used to this now. Used to the fact that every sunrise might be someone's last. Used to the gas, the dead, the silence. Especially the silence. Because here, in this hell, it's never truly quiet. Even when no one speaks. Even when the shells stop. Even when the rats pause. There's always the sound of fear, of hearts beating in sync, too fast, of breath held too long, of grief with nowhere to go. And you're still here. You reach into your pocket again, touch the edge of the photo. Still dry, still real. You don't cry. You don't smile. You just whisper, "I'm still here." And somehow, that's enough. The sun doesn't rise, not really. It just seeps in like a bruise, turning the mist from silver to yellowish gray. You stand there, unmoving, watching it creep across the jagged tops of the trench walls. There's no warmth in it, no comfort, just light enough to remind you that you're still in the same place, and that the day has started again. A voice behind you. "Thomas, didn't think you'd make it through the night," he says, like he's asking how the weather's been. You glance at him. He looks the same as always, gaunt, dirty, eyes too old for his face, but calm, almost bored. "I didn't either," you reply. He nods, lights a cigarette, and leans back against the wall. The match flares briefly, illuminating the dried blood on his collar. Neither of you mentions it. Someone further down shouts for a runner. Someone else is crying. A third man is digging with his hands, searching for something in the mud, screaming a name. You turn away, because you've learned by now that you can't help everyone. Some men are already too far gone, not dead, but not really living either. Breakfast comes, if you can call it that. A tin mess cup of something vaguely edible. You force it down, more out of habit than hunger. Then you wait. Because that's what this war is, more than anything. Waiting. You wake to screaming. Not the usual kind. Not pain or fear or madness. This is different. A whistle. Shrill. Continuous. Someone is shouting the same word over and over, but your mind can't catch it. Your body reacts first. Instinct. Panic. Muscle memory. Your hands scramble for the satchel. Your fingers fumble at the straps. The word becomes clear. Gas. Everything else becomes blur. The mask. Where is the mask? You rip it from the pouch, press it to your face. The straps bite into your skin. The world outside the rubber is chaos. Feet slamming, men pushing, someone vomiting. Your heart thunders so loudly you can barely hear the others. The mask smells of mold, sweat, and rubber. You try to breathe, but it's like sucking air through cloth soaked in vinegar. You hear the hiss before you see it. A ghostly cloud slinking over the edge of the trench. Greenish, yellow, shimmering, gas. Your eyes water inside the mask. Your lungs burn. Not from the gas, not yet, but from the memory of what gas does. Someone stumbles into you. Their mask is loose. They claw at you, wild-eyed, grabbing at your arms. You try to help, tighten the straps, seal the edge, but they're coughing now, deep, violent. Blood sprays against the inside of their glass lenses. You freeze. For a moment, all you see is red. You let go. Step back. The man collapses, twitching. You do nothing. Thomas grabs your shoulder. Keep your mouth closed, even with the mask, he growls, voice muffled. You nod. Your body is shaking, not from cold, not from exhaustion, but from something else, something more primal. Fear. The kind that hollows you out from the inside. The gas settles over the trench like fog in a nightmare. Your vision is reduced to narrow circles of glass. You hear men coughing, sobbing, choking. One is clawing at his own throat. Another is trying to climb out, gasping as if the sky itself might offer cleaner air. He doesn't make it far. A bullet finds him. You don't even flinch. The rules here are simple. Stay down. Stay masked. Stay still. You follow them. Because the alternative is unspeakable. 10 minutes pass, maybe 20. Time twists inside the mask. Your breath echoes in your ears. Each inhale a gasp. Each exhale a whimper. You try to think of anything else. Your sister's laugh. The feel of warm bread. A summer field. But all you can smell is rubber. All you can hear is your own fear. Eventually, the cloud begins to lift. Slowly. Reluctantly. Like it's disappointed it didn't kill more. The whistle blows again. Short. Twice. All clear. You pull the mask away. Air, real air, rushes in. It tastes like metal and old fire. But it's still better than inside the mask. You don't speak. No one does. Thomas coughs, just once, then lights a cigarette with shaking hands. You sit on the ground. Your knees buckle if you try to stand. Later they bury the ones who didn't get their masks on in time. 5 men. One of them still had his hands at his throat when they found him. No one says anything. No prayers, no songs, just dirt, one shovel at a time. That night, you don't sleep. You stare at the ceiling of the dugout and try not to breathe too deeply. The mask sits beside you now, always within reach, like a second skin, like a shadow that never leaves. You close your eyes. All you see is yellow. All you hear is that whistle. And in your heart, in the place where hope used to live, there's a small, quiet voice that whispers, "This isn't war. This is hell, with rules." Morning comes, and with it, the sun, mocking you with its normalcy. The trenches steam faintly as sunlight touches the slime and the wood. From above, if anyone could see, it might look peaceful, even beautiful. But down here, everything stinks of death and rubber. You find yourself flinching at the sound of any whistle, even the ones that used to mean mealtime or shift change. Your body remembers before your mind does. Your hands twitch toward the mask before you realize there's no gas this time, not yet. You clean your mask the way others polish silver, with reverence, with fear. You learn to test the seal with your eyes closed. You learn to sleep with it next to your cheek like a beloved pet or a sleeping child. You tell yourself it's just a precaution. But in your bones, you know better. You've seen what happens when the mask doesn't come fast enough. You've heard the wet, tearing sound lungs make when they drown in acid air. You've seen men scratch their own eyes out to stop the burning. And worst of all, you've seen someone survive it. He doesn't talk anymore, just stares, breathing like a bellows through half-destroyed lungs. A new man joins your unit 2 days later. He's young, too young. He laughs too easily, still calls people "sir," and wipes his boots before entering the dugout. You don't bother learning his name. He asks Thomas if the gas attacks are really that bad. Thomas doesn't answer. You look him in the eye and say, "You'll smell it before you see it, if you're lucky." That night, you can't sleep again. You start thinking about how gas has no loyalty, no strategy. It doesn't care who you are or how long you've served. It rolls in. It fills the cracks. It climbs into your lungs like a thief. And once it's inside you, there's no going back. 3 nights later, it happens again. This time, you smell it before you hear the whistle. Your brain lags behind. You blink once, twice. Then the scream, "Gas." By now, you move like clockwork. Mask on, seal tight, breathe shallow. You reach over and yank the young one's mask down for him. He's shaking too hard to get the straps aligned. You don't wait for thanks. You duck low. The hiss comes. Then the screams. Somewhere nearby, a lamp explodes. A man runs down the trench blindly, holding his face. His mask hangs from one ear. You don't go after him. No one does. The rule is brutal, but unspoken. If you can't mask up in time, you're already dead. Later, after the all clear, you help pile the bodies. The young one throws up. Thomas pats his back. You light a cigarette with trembling fingers. No one talks. You realize as the smoke curls into the fading gas that fear has no color, that some horrors don't need blood to scar you. They just need silence. That night, you wake from a dream where you're back home. Sunlight on your skin, fresh bread on the table, laughter in the other room. Then, without warning, the whole house fills with gas. Your mother screams, clutching her throat. Your sister reaches for you, her eyes melting. You can't move, can't breathe. You wake up biting your own hand to stop from screaming. Thomas is already awake. He doesn't ask. He just tosses you a water canteen and says, "Get some sleep. They'll hit us again soon." And they do. Always. The gas becomes part of you, part of the landscape, part of the ritual. You stop praying for peace. Now you just pray you're awake when the whistle blows. Because sleep is a luxury too dangerous to trust. You tuck your mask under your arm like a child with a toy, and you learn, without meaning to, how to breathe through terror, how to live when even air is your enemy. There's a moment after the gas fades and the world forgets how to scream, when silence settles like fog. That moment is when you first notice Thomas. He's sitting just across from you in the dugout, legs outstretched, back against the damp wooden slats. A cigarette dangles from his lips, half burnt, forgotten. His eyes are open, but not really looking. They never are. Thomas has been here for 14 months. That's what they say. No one knows for sure. The records are always wrong, and the truth is just another casualty in this place. But people whisper it anyway. 14 months. Like a legend. Like a curse. He doesn't speak often, and when he does, it's short. Heavy. Not because his voice is gone, but because the words he chooses have weight. The kind that makes you sit still after he finishes, just to hear the silence around them. The first time you really speak, really see each other, is after a burial. You're both shoveling dirt into a hole where a boy once breathed. No priest, no marker, just the name stitched onto the uniform, already half torn by shrapnel. You pause to wipe the sweat from your brow, hands trembling. Thomas pulls out a cigarette and lights it with a match he strikes on his boot. He doesn't offer you one. He just smokes in silence. Then, out of nowhere, he tears the cigarette in half and holds one side out. You take it. No words. Just smoke between two survivors. That's how it begins. Later, you learn his story in pieces. Not because he tells it, but because you watch. You watch how he moves when the shelling starts, how he covers his ears just a second before the blast. You see how his eyes flinch at the sound of footsteps, the fast ones, the ones that mean death is near. You notice how he never sleeps with both boots off. One stays on, just in case. He teaches you things without calling it teaching, like how to sleep with your back to the trench wall, never the open side. How to keep your socks dry using candle wax. How to breathe through your teeth when the gas comes, just enough to stay alive, not enough to panic. When you ask him how he knows all this, he just shrugs and says, "I'm still here, ain't I?" That's the closest you ever get to a story. One evening, after a failed patrol, you sit with him beside a body. Someone you both knew. The body is missing a foot. No one has the strength to pretend anymore. You sit. You smoke. You say nothing. Then Thomas murmurs, "It's always the kind ones." You look at him, startled. That's the first time you've heard him speak about someone who's died. You nod, because you know it's true. The loud ones, the angry ones, they keep going. But the kind ones, the ones who still write letters home, the ones who help carry rations, the ones who hum songs at night, they break first. You begin to measure your days by Thomas. If he's calm, you can breathe. If he's quiet, too quiet, you stay alert. If he's humming, you pray. Because that means he's trying to forget something terrible. Once you hear him hum what sounds like a lullaby. Later that night, a new recruit is shot in the throat while sleeping. You never hear that melody again. One morning, a shell lands too close. You dive. He doesn't. He just flinches. When it's over, he stands, brushes dirt off his coat and mutters, "You get tired of flinching." That's all. But it sits with you for days. There's a rhythm to Thomas. He's not fast, not loud, but he's steady. And in a place where everything crumbles, where men scream in their sleep and forget their names, steady becomes sacred. You start copying him without realizing it. The way he folds his blanket, the way he checks his boots twice before patrol, the way he looks up at the sky, not for answers, but just to remember it's still there. One night, during a quiet moment, he hands you a photo. A woman and a little girl. Faded. Worn at the edges. "Wife?" you ask softly. He nods once. "Daughter." You hand it back with shaking hands. He puts it in his pocket without a word. You never ask again. But the next time he hums, you understand. You start to think of Thomas as something permanent, like the mud, like the rats, like the war itself. He's always there. A presence. A weight. A constant. So when he doesn't show up for morning rations one day, your stomach drops. You check the dugout. Empty. The latrine. Empty. Panic crawls up your spine. Then, finally, You find him sitting by the edge of the trench, staring at the horizon. You sit beside him, breathless. He doesn't look at you, just says, "Thought I heard birds this morning." You wait. He doesn't speak again, but that's enough. Because even hope, even just the memory of birdsong, is something to hold on to. You start watching Thomas more closely after that morning. The way he sometimes tilts his head, as if listening to a sound no one else hears. The way his fingers tremble only when he's lighting a cigarette, never when he's holding a rifle. The way he carves small lines into the wood beam above his cot, one for each week survived. You count 27. He never tells you what they mean. You don't need him to. Some truths don't need saying. They just need witnessing. One night, the rain won't stop. The trench fills up to your ankles, then your shins. You're freezing, teeth clattering, everything soaked. Thomas leans over and says, "Stick your toes in the armpits, yours or someone else's. That's the only heat left." It sounds like a joke. It isn't. You do it anyway. It works. You both laugh, the sound broken and ugly and full of something that feels like life. And for just 1 second, you remember that the human body still knows how to laugh, even here, even now. You ask him once if he ever thought of deserting. He doesn't answer right away, just stares at the rat crawling over a dead man's boot. Then he says, "Every day. But I always think, what if someone needs me?" You nod, but something tightens in your chest. You realize you've started to feel the same way, not because you're brave, but because someone might need you too. And that's enough. One early dawn, you wake to silence, too quiet. Thomas is gone again. You find him at the edge of no man's land, eyes squinting through the morning fog. "What are you doing?" you whisper. He shrugs, just checking they're still out there. You follow his gaze. The Germans, the line, the other side of this madness. "They are," you say. "Yeah," he mutters. "But maybe one day they won't be." You don't know what he means. Maybe neither does he. Maybe that's the point. Weeks pass. Time stops having meaning. You eat the same thin gruel. You shit in the same overflowing trench latrine. You watch more names vanish from the roster until only faces remain, and even they begin to blur. But Thomas is still there. Always. At stand to. At mess. At the edge of every explosion. He never leads. He never follows. He just endures. Like stone. Like rot. Like the war itself. Then one night, during a shelling, you lose him. It's chaos, flames, mud, screams. You're knocked sideways by a blast, ears ringing, lungs burning. When the dust settles, you call his name. Once, twice, nothing. You dig, you search, you crawl. And finally, hours later, you find him under the collapsed roof of a dugout, blood trailing from his forehead. He's alive, barely. His eyes open, slow. "You always this loud when you're scared?" he mumbles. You laugh, choked. "I thought I'd lost you," you whisper. "You did," he replies, then closes his eyes again. But you both know he's not gone. Not yet. He recovers. Slowly. More silent than usual. More distant. But still there. Still breathing. And now, every time he lights a cigarette, he gives you half. Not just when you're burying someone. Every time. It's his way of saying, "I'm still here. You're still here. We're still alive." The trench is quieter now. Fewer men. Less laughter. Even the rats seem slower. But Thomas remains, and so do you. And even if nothing makes sense anymore, not the war, not the reasons, not the future, this one thing does. That survival, in its own quiet way, is a kind of defiance. Not glory, not victory, just defiance. And you've learned it from him, from the way he breathes, the way he watches, the way he stays. You think about what you'll tell your family if you ever make it home. You wonder how to explain Thomas, how to describe a man who doesn't smile, doesn't cry, doesn't leave, but somehow holds you together. You know they won't understand. But maybe that's okay. Because here, in this graveyard, masquerading as a trench, you don't need words. You just need a nod. A cigarette split in two. A quiet man sitting beside you when the world tries to end again. Afternoons here have a strange kind of rhythm. There's no clock, no bell. Just the sky, gray and sagging, and the subtle shift in wind that warns you of what's coming long before it arrives. You feel it first in your gut. Then, in the silence that spreads down the trench, passing from man to man like a quiet prayer no one dares to say aloud. The first shell doesn't make a sound you can describe. It's not a bang. It's not even thunder. It's more like the world ripping, like the fabric of everything being torn apart just behind your ear. You don't remember hitting the ground. One moment, you're standing beside Thomas, sharing the half of a cigarette he always gives you. The next, you're face first in cold mud, the butt still burning somewhere behind your ear and dirt falling like rain from the heavens. Thomas is on top of you, one arm braced against the trench wall, the other shielding your head. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. The way he flinches tells you everything. This isn't just shelling. This is a storm. A scream written in fire and steel. The trench shakes with each hit. You hear wood splinter. Earth collapse. Men cry out. Names. Prayers. Syllables that have no shape. Then a sound so sharp and sudden that it cuts through the chaos. A snap. Like a branch breaking. But you know it's not wood. It's someone's spine. You try not to think about it. You press your face into the wall and try to shrink. Smaller, smaller still, as if you could become part of the earth and vanish altogether. Someone's shouting, not words, just noise. You don't know who it is. It might be you. Time loses meaning. Seconds stretch like rope about to fray. And just when you think your eardrums will burst, it stops. Not with a bang, but with a kind of awful hush, like the war is pausing to take a breath before the next blow. You lift your head. Thomas is already up, scanning the trench. You follow his eyes. What you see will stay with you until your last breath. A boy, 16, maybe, crumpled against the trench wall. His left arm is missing from the elbow down, still holding a spoon, still warm from the stew he was eating when the shell hit. Next to him, another man is leaning against a wooden post. Only his face remains. The rest is gone. No legs, no chest, just wide glassy eyes staring at a sky that didn't bother to notice. You want to look away, but Thomas doesn't. He crouches beside what's left and gently, so gently, closes the eyes. No words, no prayer, just that. A gesture. Like a father tucking in a child who will never wake up. Further down the trench, someone is screaming. High-pitched, inhuman. You follow the sound and find a man clutching his ear, or where his ear used to be. There's blood everywhere. His. Others. You don't know. You press a rag to his neck. You say something. You don't know what. You think he's crying. But maybe it's you. Thomas finds you later, hands shaking, breath shallow. You're all right, he says. You shake your head. Number, I'm not. He nods, as if that's the only answer that makes sense. Good, he replies. That means you still feel it. That night, you don't sleep. No one does. You sit in silence beside the others. The wounded moan in the dark. The dying whisper names. The rest of you just sit. Like shadows with nowhere left to fall. You think about how war teaches you to count in pieces, not days, not victories. Just who still has both arms, who still has both eyes, who still has a voice. Thomas lights a cigarette and passes you half. You take it with hands that won't stop shaking. He says nothing. You say nothing. And that silence, broken only by the sound of breathing and distant thunder, becomes a kind of sanctuary, a place where grief has shape and fear has a face. You don't know what time it is when the next shell lands, but this time you don't flinch. You just close your eyes and wait. The next morning doesn't feel like morning at all. There's no sunrise, no warmth, just a pale gray smear across the sky. The kind that makes you forget the sun ever existed. You crawl from under the damp canvas sheet you'd used as cover, brushing mud off your chest, your face, your soul. Thomas is already awake, sitting on a broken crate, smoking. Neither of you say anything. There's nothing to say. Not after yesterday. Not after the limbs, the faces, the silence that screamed louder than the shells. You help with the stretchers. You carry what's left of the cook, the man who once sang old pub songs while stirring gray stew. He's missing a leg now, still humming, quietly, through cracked lips. You pass by the place where the boy with the spoon fell. It's been cleared, like he was never there, like the earth just swallowed him back, and part of you envies that. The disappearing. Later that day, a new group arrives. Fresh uniforms, clean boots. They look at you like you're ghosts. Maybe you are. One of them asks if this is the front. You nod. He looks disappointed, like he expected something grand. You want to tell him that the war isn't a place, it's a smell. It's the way dirt gets under your fingernails and never leaves. It's how you learn to recognize the sound of a man dying from 100 yards away. But instead, you just walk away. In the afternoon, the bombardment resumes, lighter this time. A cruel little reminder, a whisper. I'm still here. You and Thomas take shelter beneath the duck boards. You count the seconds between blasts. 1, 2, 3. He taps your boot with his. You ever think it'll end? He asks, like he's asking about the weather. Yes, you lie. Me neither, he replies, smiling faintly. It's the first time you've seen him smile. You wish you hadn't. That night, you find yourself staring at your own hands, covered in dirt, blood, not yours. You scrub them in the rain until your knuckles bleed. It doesn't come off. Some stains go deeper than skin. Someone is singing down the trench, low, cracked, off-key. A lullaby. You wonder who it's for. The dying? The dead? The living who wish they weren't? Does it matter? Thomas hands you a pencil stub and a torn bit of paper. Write home, he says. What should I say? Lie. So you do. You write that you're well, that the weather is nice, that the food is fine. You don't mention the boy with the spoon, or the cook with one leg, or the way the mud smells like metal and rot. You just write, I miss you, and hope they read it as, I want to survive. When the postman comes, he doesn't look anyone in the eye. He has to step over a body to reach your dugout. He hands you a letter. You don't open it. Not yet. Not tonight. Some truths are too heavy for the dark. Thomas coughs in his sleep. A wet, rattling sound. You sit beside him, listening to each breath. And in that moment, you realize you're not waiting for peace. You're not waiting for victory. You're just waiting for morning, for the chance to do it all again. Because that's what this war is, a cycle, a loop, a trench that goes in circles but never home. And as you lay down on the cold earth once more, your rifle beside you, your soul half gone, you whisper to no one, please, just one more day. Because in this place, even surviving feels like rebellion. And sometimes, that's all you have left. There's something about night in the trenches that feels less like darkness and more like drowning. No stars, no moon, just layers of black, like wet cloth pressed against your face, and you're waiting to suffocate. The order comes down low and fast. Wire patrol. Fix the barbed wire fences. Check the gaps. Move quick. Move quiet. You nod, even though everything in you wants to scream no. There are 6 of you, Thomas included. You each carry wire cutters, pliers, a coil of twisted metal slung over your back like a snake too tired to hiss. No one says a word, not even the new guy, whose teeth are chattering so loud you're sure the Germans can hear it. You crawl out, belly to mud, breath held. No man's land opens up in front of you, a theater of bones and fog and memories that don't want to be remembered. The smell hits first. Rot, gunpowder, shit, the perfume of the forgotten. You reach a corpse half buried in the muck. British uniform, no face, just a helmet turned sideways and one boot sunk so deep you can't tell if there's a foot inside. Thomas taps your shoulder, points forward. Focus. You crawl again, this time past barbed wire twisted into knots like angry prayers. The cutters barely make a sound. Snip, snip. Each click is a gamble with death. Then, a flare. It shoots up like a dying scream set on fire. Everything freezes. Light floods the field, bleaching the mud in ghostly white. You go still. So still. Not breathing, not blinking. Just one more corpse among many. You hear the hum of machine guns warming up. You pray to every god you've ever forgotten. And then it starts. A burst of gunfire slices the air. To your left, someone cries out. Not a scream, just a short, sharp grunt. Then silence. You don't dare look. You keep your face in the mud. Even when warm blood hits your cheek. Even when the new guy starts sobbing. When the flare dies, you move. Fast, blind, animal. You grab the new guy's collar and drag him backward. He's bleeding from the leg. Doesn't notice. Too busy whispering someone's name like it'll keep him alive. Thomas yells, low and angry, pointing behind you. Another soldier's caught in the wire, trapped. You crawl to him. His foot is tangled in 3 strands, and he's shaking so hard the metal is slicing deeper. I've got you, you whisper, but it's a lie, because the next flare is already rising, and this time, they're ready. The second flare ignites the sky like a second sun, cold, merciless, all-seeing. You cover the trapped soldier with your body, arms stretched low over the ground like wings made of mud and desperation. Don't move, you whisper, though your voice is shaking too much to sound real. He's crying now. Not loud, just a wet, terrified sound that doesn't belong in a man's throat. Then the machine guns open again. Bullets rake across the field, sweeping arcs of fire and metal, like a farmer blindly scything a field of bones. You feel dirt erupt beside your face. A splinter of wood from a shattered rifle butt tears through your sleeve. You don't feel the cut. You only hear the breathing under you. Shallow, erratic, still alive. Thomas is at your side. You don't know when he got there. He slips a knife from his boot, and with hands that have done this too many times, slices through the wire binding the boy's leg. 1, 2, 3 fast cuts. He pulls the soldier free with one arm and signals you with the other. Go. You grab the boy's other side, and the 3 of you crawl like wounded animals, dragging death behind you. The flare burns out again, leaving the land in darkness so thick it feels solid. And in your mind you see the flare again. The way it lit up the field like a stage. The way it made every corpse look like they were trying to sit up, to speak again, to say, I was here too. Before dawn, Thomas speaks. One more day, he says. You nod. It's all you can do. Because in this war, survival isn't triumph. It's just a quieter kind of dying. And yet, somehow, you still want tomorrow. Not for glory, not for honor, but maybe for the chance to drag one more boy out of the wire. Maybe to give someone else one more breath. Maybe, just maybe, to be more than mud. Even if no one will remember. It started with silence, not the kind that comes after an explosion or between gunshots. This was different. He just stopped. Private Ellis. 18, maybe. Soft face. Always humming some tune from Manchester. Badly, off-key, but enough to remind you that music still existed. That morning, he was sitting on an ammo crate, staring at his boots. Boots covered in mud, blood, and something else you couldn't name. No movement, no blinking, no reaction when the lieutenant shouted his name. He didn't even flinch when the mortar shells began to drop half a mile away. Just kept staring, like the war had finally drained the last drop of color from behind his eyes. Someone nudged him. No response. Someone else slapped his shoulder. Hard. Nothing. His mouth was slightly open. Breathing, yes. Alive, technically. But it was like someone had turned off the light inside. A shell of skin and bone, still warm, but empty. The medic arrived, checked for wounds. There were none. No shrapnel, no blood. Just a pulse. Just breathe. And a look that said he wasn't here anymore. Shell shock, the medic said quietly. Like it was a diagnosis for the soul. Not a sickness, not a failing, just too much, too long. Too many nights lying next to the dead. Too many mornings watching names disappear from the roster. Too many times pretending that losing a friend didn't matter. They carried him out that evening, wrapped him in a blanket. He didn't resist, didn't speak, didn't blink when Thomas pressed a cigarette between his fingers, hoping some old ritual might stir something human. Nothing. Later that night, you couldn't stop thinking about his boots. Still laced, still dirty, still sitting by the crate he used as a seat, as if he might come back for them. You stared at them for a long time, and for the first time since arriving at the front, you felt afraid in a way that had nothing to do with dying. You weren't afraid of bullets, or gas, or bayonets. You were afraid of waking up one day and realizing you'd gone. Just like Ellis, gone without a sound, gone without bleeding, gone so quietly, no one could even tell where the break began. You asked Thomas later if Ellis would ever come back. He didn't answer at first, just took a long drag of his cigarette, watching the fog rise from the no man's land like smoke from a dying fire. Then he said, maybe, but not the same way. And that was worse than a no, because it meant the war could leave you walking, breathing, speaking, but never whole again. The next morning, someone else had taken Ellis's spot in the trench rotation. A new recruit, freckles, nervous hands. You found yourself showing him where the sandbags were weakest, how to brace the rifle against the wood beam to reduce recoil, how to pee without falling in the mud, just like Ellis had once been shown. And you wondered, how many times can this wheel turn before it breaks something you can't fix? The days blurred after that. More gunfire, more names. You started to keep a list in the back of your notebook, not of kills, not of orders, but of voices you didn't want to forget. Ellis was the first name, underlined, twice. Then came Davies, who used to sketch birds in the margins of his letters, and Carter, who whistled when he was afraid. Each name was a thread holding you to the earth, each memory a rebellion against the forgetting. One night, while on watch, you thought you saw Ellis again. Just a glimpse, a silhouette in a corner of the trench, sitting on that same crate. But when you blinked, it was gone. Your chest ached, not from fear, but from knowing that you'd already begun to carry ghosts in your blood. And once they entered, they never left. The next day, you found Ellis's boots still sitting behind the supply stack, untouched, laces still tied. You picked them up and placed them next to your own, not for practicality, not for cleaning, but because somehow it felt wrong to let them stay forgotten, as if by placing them there, side by side, you were saying, "You were here." I remember. That night, when the bombs fell again, you didn't run. You sat beside the boots, rifle across your lap, eyes wide open to the black sky. And in the thunder of the earth breaking open once more, you whispered the names of every soldier the war tried to erase, not loud, just enough for the dead to hear. Because somewhere deep inside you, a truth had taken root. Not every battle ends in blood. Some end in silence. And not every wound scars the skin. Some tear through the soul and keep bleeding long after the war forgets your name. The trench is quieter tonight. Not silent, never silent, but slower. The guns feel further away, like they're hesitating. Even the rats seem less frantic. They're scratching subdued beneath the planks. You're on night watch again. Second shift. The kind where time doesn't move forward or backward, it just pools around your boots like the mud you can't shake off. Your hands are cold, not numb, not frostbitten, just aware that they are no longer yours. They tremble a little when they hold the rifle, not from fear, just fatigue wearing a different mask. Beside you, Thomas leans against the wall of the trench. He's got that old tin cup in his hand, the one dented on one side, stained with 1,000 bad teas. He doesn't say anything for a while, just drinks, slow, thoughtful, like he's saving each swallow for later. Then he speaks, low, like a lullaby too tired to sing. "Ever try treacle pudding?" he asks. You blink, caught off guard. He smiles without teeth. "My Martha made the best in Surrey. Caramel so thick it glued your lips shut. Boy had to pick it off his chin with a spoon." He chuckles. You do too. Not because it's funny, but because it matters. And somehow, just like that, the trench fades. For a moment, brief and holy, you're not sitting in a ditch surrounded by the dead. You're in a warm kitchen. There's rain on the roof. A woman with kind eyes is laughing at a boy covered in sugar. You don't know these people, but you want to. Thomas keeps talking, tells you about the first time he held his son. Said the kid looked like a raisin with lungs. Tells you about the smell of wet grass after the summer storms. About the sound of bees buzzing too close to the clothesline. About the stupid green hat his wife wore when she gardened. The one he teased her about, year after year. Every word lands soft, heavy, precious, like treasure smuggled into hell. You realize something, sitting there in the damp cold. In this place of ruin, the most powerful thing a man can carry is not a weapon, but a memory. Not a bullet, but a story. Later, when Thomas dozes off, head resting awkwardly against the wood, you sit alone again, and for the first time in days, you let your mind wander, not to tactics, not to gas masks, but to the smell of your mother's soup, the sound of your brother's laughter echoing down the hallway, the soft, warm creak of your old bed at home. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to remember, because sometimes the only way to survive the trench is to pretend you're somewhere else. You try to rest, not sleep. Sleep feels impossible now, but at least let your body fold into something softer than vigilance. Thomas snores faintly beside you, one arm crooked over his chest, the other still loosely clutching that dented cup like it holds the last bit of peace he owns. You envy his ability to dream, or maybe he doesn't dream at all anymore. Maybe he's just learned how to disappear for a while without leaving. You lie back, head against the dirt, and stare at the weave of shadows above. The sky is a blur, black, gray, a sickly green where flares drift and dissolve. No stars tonight, no moon, only breath and cold and the echo of stories that don't belong here. From somewhere down the trench, a quiet sob, then silence, then coughing, You don't look. You've learned not to. Not because you don't care, but because if you always care, something inside you breaks. So you focus on the sound of your own breath. Inhale, hold, exhale, like it's prayer, or penance, or both. Eventually, you do drift. Not fully, just the kind of sleep where the line between dream and memory blurs. You see your father's hands, calloused and warm, building the chicken coop behind the shed. You hear your sister humming that lullaby she made up when you had fever as a child. You taste warm bread, fresh butter, feel the weight of a book on your lap, light on your face, laughter you didn't know you missed. But even in dreams, the war creeps in. A drip of mud, a sudden flash, the metallic tang of fear curling under your tongue. You wake, not with a jolt. You've learned not to waste energy on panic. You just open your eyes and listen. Not for bombs, but for Thomas. For the sound of his breath, still there, still human, still something tethering you to what was. He stirs as dawn creeps in. Gray light filters through the slats like shame. Any sleep? He asks, rubbing his eyes. You shake your head. No dreams? You shrug. Then say, not the kind I want to keep. He nods, understanding more than you said. And for a moment, you both sit in silence. Not the kind that wounds, but the kind that heals. The kind that says, I was here too. I miss them too. I remember too. Before the next watch takes over, Thomas pulls a crumpled piece of paper from his coat. A letter. Unsent. Smudged and folded so many times it's soft like cloth. He doesn't read it, just holds it, then tucks it back inside. I tell her stories, he says, even if I never send them. Why? He looks at you, eyes tired, voice calm. Because the war can't have everything. And that stays with you more than anything else. Because in the midst of dirt and death and days that don't feel real, what keeps you human isn't your gun, or your rank, or your orders. It's a crumpled letter. It's the memory of treacle pudding. It's a laugh that doesn't belong here, and yet insists on existing anyway. That night, when it's your turn again to keep watch, you tell a story out loud, just to the dark, about your little brother's wooden train, about the day your dog chased the postman into the pond, about a birthday cake with too much cinnamon. No one hears you, but the dirt listens. And that, somehow, is enough. You don't remember falling asleep, but you remember waking up, not to screams, not to artillery, not to that low growl of something dying just out of sight, but to silence, gentle silence, and warmth. For a moment, you think you're dead. But death wouldn't feel this soft. You're on a cot, not the ground, not the trench. A cot, raised, real, absurdly comfortable. The air doesn't reek of rot or cordite. It smells like soap, like boiled linen, like peace, if peace had a scent. You blink, twice, just to be sure, and then you hear it. Laughter, real, human, joyful. You've been rotated out. Rear line, temporary relief. A whole week, 7 days, away from the front. The officer told you last night, but it didn't feel real until now. Now, with your boots off, with your feet dry, with your back uncurled for the first time in weeks. Thomas is there too, shirtless, scrubbing his arms in a basin, humming something out of tune. He glances over, smirks. Don't just lie there looking holy, he says. There's hot water with your name on it. Hot. Water. You don't move right away. Your brain is still trying to believe it. But then your body does what your soul can't yet. It stands. It walks. It hopes. The water is scalding. You bite your tongue when it touches your skin. And then you laugh. You're not sure why. Maybe because it hurts. Maybe because it feels human to hurt like that. You scrub, hard, as if the grime will take the memories with it. It won't. But still, you scrub, and when you're done, you smell like soap. And the mirror, cracked and smudged as it is, shows you a face you barely recognize. Cleaner, but older, so much older. You get dressed in something not soaked through with sweat or mud or blood. It hangs loose on your frame. You've lost weight, too much. But it's fabric, dry, whole. You walk out into the sun, and you blink again, because the light doesn't feel like a threat anymore. Someone set up a football pitch. It's barely more than a flattened field with 2 jackets as goals. But it doesn't matter. You're already running, barefoot, laughing, chasing a ball like you were never taught to shoot a rifle. The laughter hurts. Your ribs ache from smiling. You don't care. For an hour, maybe more, you forget you're a soldier. You remember what it's like to be a boy. Afterward, there's tea. Still bitter. Still oversteeped. But hot. And with it, warm bread. Not ration bread. Real bread. With crust and softness and steam curling up like forgiveness. You close your eyes when you bite it. And for the first time in weeks, you taste something. That night, someone plays a violin. Badly. But it doesn't matter. The notes wobble and fall apart, but every man around you sits quietly, listening like it's the Royal Philharmonic. You see someone cry. You almost do too. Not because it's sad, but because it's so beautifully normal, so wildly unnecessary in a place built entirely around necessity. When you lie down that night, on a cot again, you don't expect to sleep, but you do, and you dream of nothing. Not war, not home, just darkness. Warm, quiet darkness, the kind that heals. The next day, you wake up before the sun, not because you were ordered to, but because your body is still wrapped in the rhythm of survival. You sit up, expecting sirens, barked orders, the stench of damp wool and panic, but instead, birdsong, real birds. You forgot they even existed. You step outside. The grass is wet with dew, not blood. And the sky? It's pink. Not smoke, not gas, just dawn. Honest and stupidly beautiful. There's mail. A sack of it, dropped like treasure. Everyone gathers, pretending not to care, but hoping desperately. You get one. Your name. Barely legible. The paper soft from its journey. It's from your mother. You sit under a crooked tree and read. She tells you about the garden, about how the cats had kittens again, about Mrs. Ellsworth from 2 streets down, and how she still waves from the bakery window every morning. There's no mention of the war. No questions, just stories. Tiny, irrelevant, miraculous stories. You read it twice. Then tuck it close to your chest like armor. In the afternoon, Thomas and a few others stage a play. They find props, a bent saucepan, a broom handle, a sheet. It's terrible, which makes it perfect. You laugh until your sides hurt. One man forgets his lines and improvises with sheep noises. Another wears a helmet backwards the whole time and insists he's a duke from the future. You haven't felt joy like this since before. Before all of it. That evening, you sit with Thomas by a campfire made from scavenged wood and a half-burnt fence post. He's whittling something with a tiny knife. A bird, maybe, or a horse. You can't quite tell. He hands it to you. Rough, uneven, but real. You don't say, "Thank you." He wouldn't want you to. You just hold it. And the fire crackles between you like old friendship. In the quiet, you find something strange. You don't want to go back. Not because you're afraid, though you are, but because now you remember what the world can be. What you can be. Not just a body in a trench. Not just a gun with a heartbeat, but a boy who kicks a ball. A son who reads letters. A man who laughs at sheep noises in a makeshift play. But you know the rotation will end. The paper will come. The march will begin. And the trench, the mud, will open its arms again, waiting, hungry. So that night, you don't sleep, not because you're haunted, but because you don't want to miss a single moment. You sit up, wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of soap, listening to men snore softly around you. And you think, this is what peace sounds like. Not silence, but rest. And as dawn begins to flirt with the horizon, you whisper a promise to yourself, not about survival, not about bravery, but about remembering. Because if war steals everything, then memory is your rebellion. You sit beneath the crooked tree again, the same one from your week in the rear. Only now the breeze feels colder, not from the air, but from what you brought back with you. The letter is half finished. You've started it 5 times, ripped up 4. The page before you now bears only 6 words. I'm still here. I love you. You stare at them for a long while, because everything else, everything that came before and after, is unwritable. How do you explain the smell? That mix of rot and wet and metal that crawled so far into your skin it replaced your own scent? How do you write about Thomas and the way his eyes stayed open too long last night because neither of you could sleep? Or about the boy who arrived last week, fresh-faced and smiling, and now won't speak to anyone because he woke up holding part of someone else's hand? You try. You really do. You begin a sentence. There was shelling last night. And then you stop. You start again. A friend of mine was, but your pen hovers. The ink waits. The paper blinks. And then you cross it out. Because she won't understand. Because she shouldn't. Because if you hand her this truth, this raw, howling, bloody truth, it'll tear through the kitchen back home like shrapnel. And you've already lost enough. So instead, you write this. I saw a bird today. A real one. Blue feathers. It sang for a second and then flew off. Reminded me of that one that nested by the window, remember? You smile at the memory, even if it's cracked and fading. You doodle something in the corner, a wonky little sketch of a house. Not yours exactly, but enough like it. You draw a teapot on the windowsill. A cat curled near the door, smoke rising from a chimney you're not sure is still there. You seal the letter with a pinch of mud on your fingers. You wonder if it will stain the paper. You hope it does. Somehow it feels more honest than your words. Later, you sit by the fire with the others. Someone is humming. Someone is staring. Someone is carving a spoon out of boredom. You clutch the letter in your jacket, right against your chest, like it's armor, or confession, or both. You think about what you didn't write, about what you couldn't, about how silence here isn't cowardice, it's mercy. Because in this place, truth isn't a gift, it's a wound you carry quietly. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for the ones who love you is to lie just enough so they can keep dreaming. You walk to the drop point the next morning, a wooden crate near the quartermaster's tent, half covered with a tarp and the smell of oil. You slide your letter in among the others. Some envelopes are crisp. Some are folded like secrets. One has a dried flower pressed into the flap. Another is smeared with something darker than ink. You linger for a moment, fingers still touching the corner of your page. But then you let go, because you know she'll read it, and she'll smile, and she'll tuck it away somewhere safe. And for 5 minutes, maybe even 10, she'll believe you're okay. And that, in its own quiet way, is enough. The day crawls by. You clean your rifle. You scrape mud from your boots that never really get clean. You help a medic tape up a sprained wrist, then sit with a boy who's shaking for no reason he can explain. He says, I can't get the blood out from under my nails. But his hands are clean. You don't correct him. You just sit beside him. Sometimes that's all there is left to do. That night, you lie on your cot. The trench smells like mold and metal. Someone a few meters away is crying softly into a coat. You pull the blanket up to your chin. Try to think of the house you drew, the teapot, the window, the bird. You imagine her reading your letter by candlelight, her fingers brushing over the sketch, her eyes filling with something between pride and sorrow. And maybe, just maybe, she'll read between the lines. She'll know what you couldn't say. She'll feel the weight behind "I'm fine." And maybe, when the war is over, and you're standing in that doorway again, mud still caked on your soul, she won't ask what happened. She'll just take your hand and say, "I know." You close your eyes, and in the silence where truth has no shape and memory no border, you whisper a prayer into the dark. Let them never have to understand. Because if they do, if they ever stand where you're standing, then the world is lost, and silence will be the only thing left that's honest. You walk back toward the front with your boots half laced and your chest half armored. The road is no longer a road, just a series of broken earth veins cut open by shell craters, lined with trees that look more like burnt matchsticks than anything once living. Each step squelches with old rain and older blood. Someone behind you hums a tune from home, not out of joy but out of habit. It trembles in the air like something dying slowly. You pass a signpost hanging sideways, the lettering barely legible. Someone has etched a name into it with a bayonet. It doesn't say where you are. It says who you've lost. The trench greets you like a ghost you never wanted to see again. That smell. You almost forgot. Not quite rot, not quite sulfur, but that inescapable scent of cordite and mold and something deeper, something like despair left out in the rain. You step back into your section, same planks, same sandbags, same faint trace of Thomas's cough from the corner. He doesn't turn to greet you. He just nods, slowly. You nod back. Nothing else needs to be said. You unpack your things, which is to say, you move them from one pocket to another. A crumpled tin of tobacco. A folded letter you'll never send. A piece of dry bread you're pretending is still good. Someone has scrawled a new set of names on the wall above your cot. 3 of them are already crossed out. You don't ask. You don't want to know. Later, you climb to the edge of the parapet and peer out. The wire is still there, twisted, snarled, gleaming like the bones of a dead thing. Beyond it, no man's land lies exactly as you left it. Only now it's colder, quieter, hungrier. You feel nothing, not relief, not dread, just nothing. And that's what scares you the most. You used to tremble. You used to hear every creak of the boards like a warning. You used to flinch when the wind changed direction. Now, the fear is gone, not because you've conquered it, but because something inside you simply stopped responding, like a wire that's been cut, like a candle that burned too long and forgot what it means to be fire. That night, you lie awake listening to the silence. But even silence has a shape here. It leans against your chest, crawls behind your eyes, sinks into your bones until you're not sure where you end and the trench begins. You remember when you first arrived, when the mud felt foreign and the rats made your skin crawl. Now they're just neighbors. You even gave one a name last week. You can't remember what it was. And somehow, that's the most human thing you've done all day. Morning comes, but the sky doesn't change. It's still that bruised gray that doesn't know whether it wants to be dawn or dusk. Someone mutters a joke. Something about the war ending by Christmas. No one laughs. Not because it's untrue, but because they told the same joke last year. You get back into the routine. Cleaning weapons, patching sandbags, counting rations that never quite add up. The motions come easy now, not because they make sense, but because your body remembers them better than your heart does. You try not to look at the new faces, fresh uniforms, boots that haven't cracked, eyes still wide. They still flinch at the first whistle blast, still gag when the wind carries the scent of something buried too shallow. You want to warn them. You want to say, stop remembering things now. It'll hurt less later. But you don't. You let them learn it the way you did, one breath at a time. That evening, you carve your initials into the wooden frame of your post, right beside a name that's already starting to fade. You press the knife in deeper than you meant to. Wood splinters under your thumb. A drop of blood beads where the blade slips. You smile. It's the first real thing you've felt in days. As night settles in again, the trench seems to breathe with you. Not alive, but not dead either. It exists in that strange limbo, where men survive without living, and time passes without moving. You curl into your corner. Thomas shifts beside you, eyes half closed. He's humming again, low, broken, a lullaby in a graveyard. You close your eyes, and in the pitch-black stillness of your return, you realize something that chills you more than any wind. You're not afraid anymore, and that might be the most terrifying thing of all. It began with a whistle, not the kind that meant tea's ready, not the kind your mother used when calling you in for supper. This whistle was jagged, mechanical, cruel. It tore through the stillness like a knife across glass. And then, the shout, "Gas! Gas!" You've never moved so fast in your life. Your hands fumbled for the mask, fingers thick as frozen ropes, shaking too hard to find the straps. Your breath was already clawing at your throat before the mask even touched your face. Rubber, sweat, fogged glass. You pulled it on backwards, ripped it off, tried again. The world around you turned to chaos. You remember the first smell, sweet, sickly, deceptive, like flowers left to rot in the sun. The gas had no color, no form, just a slow, creeping death. You couldn't see it, but you could hear it. Men choking, sputtering, screaming. Someone tore their mask off in panic, gagging, eyes bulging, arms flailing. Within seconds, his face swelled like raw meat. He collapsed, convulsing. Another tried to run, but fell headfirst into the mud, mask askew, boots scraping desperately at the earth as if digging his own grave. You stayed still. You breathed through the filter, short, measured, terrified. Then came the second wave, not gas, men. German troops rising from their lines, emerging like wraiths from the yellow mist, bayonets fixed, shouting something you couldn't understand. It didn't matter. You understood enough. You raised your rifle, fired, missed, fired again. The recoil slammed against your shoulder like a punishment. You weren't aiming anymore, just surviving. Someone next to you screamed your name. Or maybe not. You didn't look. You couldn't. Inside the mask, your breath echoed like a drumbeat. Your own voice sounded alien, muffled, desperate. You shouted. You think you did. But no one answered. It was as if the world had folded in on itself and now existed only inside your helmet, just you, your heartbeat, and death pressing in from all sides. You don't know how long it lasted, minutes, hours, forever. And then, silence. Not peace, just absence. Like the earth had stopped breathing. You removed your mask slowly, hesitating as if peeling off your own skin. The air tasted metallic, like copper coins dissolved in fog. Your throat burned. Your eyes watered, even behind the glass. But you were still breathing. Around you, others weren't. You stepped over the body of a man whose name you never learned. His face was pale green, mouth open in a final, silent scream. His hands clutched his chest, as if trying to hold his lungs in place. A medic crouched nearby, shaking, pressing 2 fingers to a neck that had long gone cold. He didn't even look up when you passed. Further down, someone was coughing. Violent, wet. Blood sprayed the trench wall like paint from a broken brush. He'd survive, they said, but he'd never speak again. Another man stood facing the wall, his back to the carnage. He kept repeating his name over and over as if afraid he might forget it. When night came, it brought no stars, just the weight of what remained. Thomas sat beside you, mask dangling from his fingers, eyes fixed on nothing. He didn't speak, didn't need to. You both knew. You counted heads. You did it without thinking, like a roll call for ghosts. 10 went out, 5 came back. You were one of them, and that was the whole story. Not a victory, not a miracle, just survival. The bar keeps getting lower. Later, as you tried to sleep, your ears still rang from the screams, and your dreams were thick with fog and footsteps. You woke gasping, clutching at your chest as if the poison had returned in your sleep, but it hadn't. This time, it was only memory. And in this war, that might be worse than the real thing. The quiet came like a stranger you didn't trust, not the gentle kind that soothes, but the kind that presses too long on old bruises, the kind that smells of blood that stopped flowing. It was the afternoon after the gas, and the world had gone mute. No gunfire, no shouting, not even birds, just wind, and the crackle of canvas, and the occasional sob, too quiet to interrupt the silence. You were on watch, standing by the trench edge, rifle in hand, boots sunk half a foot in mud. Your body was present, your mind wasn't. Beyond the wire, no man's land stretched like an open wound. Torn helmets, boots without owners, shapes in the distance that might have been bags or bodies. You didn't squint to check, because what if they were still breathing? What if they weren't? Thomas was down the line, kneeling in a shell crater, elbow deep in someone who used to be laughing yesterday. He wasn't a chaplain, wasn't a gravedigger, but today he was both. You watched him wrap something, a hand, a rib, in what looked like a torn blanket. He wasn't crying, but he wasn't dry-eyed either. Each motion was tender, ritualistic, as if he were folding the dead into some final prayer. At some point, you looked away. You had to, because the sun was still shining, and that felt like a kind of mockery. A runner passed by, mud-splashed, too young, too thin. He handed you a paper. Orders, roster, next shift. Things that still pretended this was a job and not a slow funeral. You nodded without reading. Your mind wandered back to the letters in your breast pocket. Unread, unopened. You were afraid they might be from people who still believed you could feel joy. You didn't want to prove them wrong. Later, someone lit a cigarette. Not you. Your hands were shaking. The smell drifted through the trench, cutting through the rot, reminding everyone there was still such a thing as fire without screaming. Thomas returned. His face was unreadable, the kind of stillness that only comes after too many endings. He sat beside you. Neither of you spoke. But in the hush, you heard everything. The names unspoken, the questions unanswered. The trench became a church with no sermons, just benches and ghosts. That night you wrote a name on a piece of wood, stuck it into the earth beside the crater. You didn't know if it was the right name, didn't care if it was spelled wrong, but it felt like something. A rebellion against forgetting, a rebellion against this war's obsession with turning people into statistics. You stepped back, looked at the crooked marker, and whispered, "You mattered." Then you returned to your post, and the wind kept blowing. He arrived just before dawn, 17, maybe younger, a face still soft at the edges, with eyes that hadn't yet learned how to dull themselves against horror. His uniform was too clean. His boots still held their shape. He carried his rifle like it was something borrowed. They told you he'd be joining your fire team. No ceremony, no handshake, just a nod and a scribbled name on a damp roster. You didn't ask questions. He didn't offer answers. That's how it always began. You showed him where to hang his things. Though there wasn't much space left for belongings or hope, you pointed out the safest post to stand during the night shift. The one behind the sandbags reinforced with old biscuit tins, the one where Thomas once stood. You handed him a cup of weak tea, warned him not to trust the warmth. "It's just hot water pretending," you said, and he chuckled like it was the first joke he'd heard in days. Later, as you sat side by side during stand-to, you caught him staring at his boots. "Take 'em off when you sleep," you muttered. "Dry your socks by the fire barrel and rub your feet. Every damn night. Trench foot's not a badge, it's rot." He nodded, eyes wide. Like every word you said held weight. Not because it was wise, but because it came from someone still alive. You realized in that moment he saw you the way you used to see Thomas, and it unsettled you more than any shell blast. At midday, a few shots rang out across no man's land. He flinched. You didn't. It wasn't bravery, just routine. You watched him breathe faster, fumble with his ammo pouch, check and recheck his bayonet. You placed a hand on his shoulder, not as comfort, but as anchor. "First time's the loudest," you said. "After that, your ears do the forgetting." He didn't reply, but he stayed beside you and didn't run. That night, he asked about your hometown. You hesitated. He noticed. "I'm from Norwich," he offered. "Used to play violin. Stupid, I know." "Not stupid," you said. Then, after a beat, "My mum made blackberry jam. I can still taste it sometimes." He smiled, and it was real. You hated how much that smile reminded you of someone else, someone you'd buried, or maybe just stopped mentioning. The next morning, he stood his first full watch. You pretended to sleep nearby, but your hand never left your rifle. When a rat skittered across the trench floor, he jumped, almost fired. You whispered, "If it ain't got boots, don't shoot." He laughed. You didn't. Because that was Thomas's joke. And now, it was yours. By the end of the third day, he didn't flinch at the distant booms, didn't gasp when a runner passed with news of more casualties. You watched the lines on his face deepen, watched his fingers grow surer, his eyes grow quieter. He was still him, but less so. And you were still yourself, but not in the way you used to be. You had become someone's Thomas, without trying, without asking, just by surviving. And now you understood something brutal. This war didn't just break people, it recycled them, over and over and over again. That night, sleep found you, but not gently. It crept in like fog through the cracks of your ribs, wrapped its cold fingers around your spine, and pulled you under before you had time to brace. But it wasn't the war you dreamt of, not this time. No trenches, no whistles, no blood, just a tiled roof, sunlight spilling through a dusty window, the smell of soap and old wood and something baking. Bread, maybe, or apples. You were standing barefoot in a kitchen you knew too well, the kind where every creak in the floorboard had a name, where the walls held memories instead of mud. Your mother's voice echoed from another room. Dinner's ready, warm, ordinary, alive. There was no urgency, no tension in your shoulders, no scream caught in your throat. You sat at the table. Your knees touched the worn edge of the wood, the same one you used to scratch with a fork as a boy. Steam curled from the plates. The light was golden. And then you opened your eyes. The trench ceiling was inches from your face. Your chest heaved, soaked with sweat. Your hands trembled like they'd just escaped drowning. It took a moment to understand. You weren't back home. There was no roof, no warmth, just the muffled shuffle of boots. a rat skittering past, and the distant thud of something heavy, far away. That's when it hit you. The dream had betrayed you, not with horror, but with peace. You sat up slowly, breath shallow. Thomas glanced over from the other side, half awake. "You good?" he murmured. You nodded, unable to speak. Because how do you explain the cruelty of dreaming about normal things, when normal no longer exists? You looked at your hands, still dirty, still shaking. You buried your face in them, and for a fleeting second wished the war would just scream again. Because at least the noise made sense. Silence was worse. It reminded you of everything you couldn't go back to. Later, when the shift changed, you stood watch in the pale blue of pre-dawn. The sky looked clean, deceptive. Behind you, the others stirred. The kid, the one you'd mentored, was muttering in his sleep. Something about a bike ride or a summer picnic. You wanted to shake him, to wake him up, to save him from the dream. But you didn't. You let him stay there a little longer. Because maybe, just maybe, it was the only place left where things still made sense. You used to believe nightmares were filled with screams, explosions, pain. Now you knew better. Nightmares were quiet. They came dressed in sunlight and smelled like home. They waited until your guard was down, until your heart softened, and then whispered, "Remember this?" And when you did, when every corner of your soul surged with the longing to return, you woke up to realize you weren't supposed to. You wouldn't. So you learned not to dream, or at least not to remember. You trained your mind to sleep in snapshots, black and white, out of focus. No voices, no faces, just enough to rest, not enough to feel. Because in a world built to break you, even hope could be a landmine. And peace, the cruelest weapon of all. You don't count the days anymore. You count hours. Sometimes you count breaths. In, outside. Another one. Still here. Your boots are soaked again. There's something crawling under your collar, but you don't bother. The stench of damp rot, of rusted metal and old wounds is now just background noise, like the heartbeat you no longer feel. But no must still be there. You lean against the muddy wall of the trench, the same place you've leaned 100 times, maybe 1,000. The boards above creak when someone walks past. The sky above is a narrow ribbon of gray, just wide enough to remind you there's still a world up there. But it feels like another planet. You light a cigarette, your last one. Thomas gave it to you this morning with a grunt and a nod. You said nothing, just pressed it to your lips. He understood. He always does. You hear the whistle blow, not the kind that means attack, just the signal for rations, but your body flinches anyway. That's what war does. It rewires you, so that even kindness sounds like danger. Even silence feels like a threat. You take a long drag. The smoke burns in your lungs, a sensation that reminds you you're still alive. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only thing that matters now. You remember once thinking about courage, how movies or books made it look like a fire, something loud, dramatic, a choice. But here, courage is quiet. It's standing up to take your shift when your legs ache. It's sharing the last bite of something that barely counts as food. It's whispering to a boy with shaking hands, "It's going to be okay," even when you know it might not be. You're not brave, you're tired, but you're here. Sometimes you look at the letter still folded in your pocket, the one you started 3 weeks ago, still unfinished. "Dear Mom, I'm okay." That's all it says. You haven't had the strength to write more. Not because there's nothing to say, but because there's too much. How do you explain a life that's become a slow unraveling? How do you describe the way you forget your own voice because you've gone too many days without needing it? So instead, you don't. You keep the letter close, like a charm, like a lie that keeps you human. You're not a hero. Heroes die in explosions. They get medals, statues, names carved into stone. You dig. You freeze. You watch friends disappear between breaths. You tie bandages with trembling hands. You bury pieces of people you once sang with. You hold back screams so others won't fall apart. You laugh at jokes that aren't funny just to feel something. That's not heroism. That's surviving. And tonight, as the darkness creeps in, as the rats scurry and the wind carries the sound of distant thunder, you sit with Thomas. You don't talk. You don't have to. He lights a match, cups it with his hand, ignites a tiny flame in a world full of ash. You pass the cigarette back and forth, like it's holy. And in that moment, you think, maybe being alive, just alive, is enough. Maybe in a place like this, survival is sacred. Not because it's glorious, not because it will be remembered, but because it means you've kept something fragile intact. Yourself. Even if cracked. Even if lost. Even if no one ever knows your name. You're still here. And somehow, that feels like the bravest thing you've ever done. If you've made it this far, thank you. For sitting with this story. For breathing through it with me. It wasn't easy, I know. But then again, the truth never is. What we just walked through together wasn't just about war, it was about survival in its most silent form. The kind that doesn't come with medals or music, just mud, smoke, and the quiet endurance of the human soul. We met men who didn't ask to be heroes, only to come home. We saw fear not in screams, but in stillness and love. In the smallest of gestures, a cigarette, a letter never sent, a name whispered into the dark. Maybe that's what this story leaves behind. A reminder that being human is sometimes the hardest thing of all. And yet, it's what we do best. In our cracks, we find light. In our silence, we speak the loudest truths. So if you carry anything from this journey, let it be this. You are never as alone as you think. Even in the mud, someone is lighting a match. And survival, in any form, is a quiet, sacred act. If this story meant something to you, even just a little, I'd be truly grateful if you'd consider leaving a comment, subscribing to the channel, or sharing this with someone who might need it. Not for the numbers, but because stories like these deserve to be heard, not buried. And this is only the beginning. We're building something here. A space for softness, depth, and forgotten voices. So if your heart is still open, I hope you'll come back. There's more to tell. And I'd love to have you here when we do. Until then, take care of that quiet place inside you. The one that understands. The one that remembers. See you soon.